True or false? Mitch McConnell will warm up to the idea of cannabis reform. What's your thoughts?
Wow.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to our Trade to Black podcast as we set things up and tee things up for the midterm elections today. Big news coming up this week with cannabis and some big outcomes depending on how the election will basically perform, who's going to get elected in, who do you think is going to win, and whoever party gets in, what does this mean for the cannabis industry? Leave a comment below. Are you following this closely? Subscribe to our channel, click on that bell for all notifications, and make sure to share this video with your network because we appreciate it. As mentioned, we're talking midterm elections, and before we get into today's podcast, as usual, all views on the Trade to Black podcast and the guests on this podcast are purely opinion. You should not treat any opinions expressed by us or our guests as investment advice. The views on this podcast are solely to be intended to be informational and are not investment advice. Okay, like we said, let's go back to the podcast. Let's welcome him in. He's the CEO of Glasshouse Brands, Kyle Kazan. Good to see you, sir. How are things?
Things are great, Chad. Nice to be here with you and Ben.
Yes, Ben, good to see you. Hope you had a good week. How are things?
Had a great week. Looking forward to the elections next week. Should be some ramifications for the cannabis industry. Looking forward to it.
So let's start with that. Here we are. We've had a lot of talk, Kyle. We'll start with you on what this midterm election is going to mean for the cannabis industry. A lot of talk right now is that we're seeing a sea of red across the board, which would mean Mitch McConnell back into a majority leader position in Congress with power potentially to block cannabis legislation for at least 2 years. So, Kyle, let's begin with this. True or false? Mitch McConnell will warm up to the idea of cannabis reform. What's your thoughts?
Wow.
Coming in hard.
I would say I'm going to go medium on that one, where he's going to be need to be cajoled. Something to keep an eye on that I think helps push that is there are adult use cannabis on the ballot in Arkansas, red state, North Dakota, South Dakota, red states, Missouri, pretty red, and Maryland. If those first 4 states go red, I think that starts tugging at McConnell pretty hard, because now you've got red senators that are sort of in a quandary.
Right. Ben, what's your thoughts on it all when it comes to McConnell's stance?
Yeah, obviously he's a cannabis bear. He blocked anything that came from the House over his terms as Senate Majority Leader last time under the Trump administration. So obviously, like he's not a proponent of the industry. However, there are other ramifications that could lead to good things. For example, Cowan has came out and said that perhaps safe banking in a red Congress has a chance to go through, at least on the banking side. That could help. That is, Chuck Schumer looks to get whatever he can before he cedes that majority leadership in January. So, I think in the short term, it could help something like SAFE. In the long term, I don't know. I'm sort of iffy on that, but maybe something like banking. But, full legalization, something like that, I'm pretty sure he will not support.
Kyle, how do you see this playing out? Everybody has this could be possible. Everybody knows all this stuff, but honestly, how do you see this playing out Tuesday in the, I guess the aftermath from it all?
So I think we're going to see the Republicans do very well in the House and take control by a decent margin. A lot of my friends, and I'll be frank, here in the U.S., it almost matters to know, where are you starting from? Which silo? I've been a registered libertarian since I was 18, so I'm in neither of the silos. So I sort of have a different view. I would tell you that I think it's likely that McConnell retakes the Senate. Most of my friends are hoping beyond hope that Schumer holds on. I do think, though, in the lame duck Senate, we are going to get Safe Plus.
You do?
I do. I don't think we're going to get uplisting. I don't think we're going to get 280E. I don't think we'll get SBA. But I do think we get Safe Plus out.
So just refresh our audience, Ben. Safe Plus, what that means then for the industry. What's different from safe banking versus Safe Plus?
Safe banking, there's a regular banking bill that would help smaller dispensaries obtain funds, allow them to hold bank accounts, business bank accounts, instead of being able to instead of storing money on location dispensaries, just to allow them to have normal banking services. That's the Safe Banking bill. And then there's also a Safe Plus bill, which would add some social justice amendments to it, expungements, different measures to bring up the social justice element to it. That's the Safe Banking Plus, and that's what a lot of people are hoping for. But under a McConnell regime, I'm not sure if the GOP does win the Senate. I'm not sure if that's going to happen. More than likely, a safe banking standalone, would be something to look forward to, either that itself or in the NDAA.
So, piling on Van a little bit there, I would say that the hope would be expungement of misdemeanors. Okay. So we're not going heavy into the social because, to his point, the Republicans are going to be very sensitive about anything social justice.
Do you think an all-red Senate could be good for cannabis, the overall industry, in the short term, Kyle?
I think the first thing we have to do is acknowledge that it's almost Tuesday. The Democrats have held the 3 seats of power. And have done absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
So when I have my friends on the blue side say this is a terrible scenario, I'm like, what? You think we'd get nothing for 2 years? Mm-hmm. Is that what you think we get with the red versus the blue?
Right.
So I think that.
What was the response to that when you mentioned that?
Usually, and I even get this in my own family. It's just how bad the other side is, and it's just yelling and screaming about everything else that's not even cannabis. I'm just basically like, look, I've been in business a long time. When I see that Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden are 2 of the largest recipients of big pharma money, you can't say that didn't have something to do with this. Unfortunately, in U.S. politics, we are awash with lobbyists on K Street, and they push things. When I tell you that the things that I'm watching on TV on Tuesday and on the internet, I'm going to be watching those races in the states that I mentioned earlier. To me, that's actually bigger because the states have sort of said, "Screw you guys" at the federal level. You're just getting in the way.
Yeah.
And
what were the states? Just to update the audience, outline the states that we were talking about.
Sure. Arkansas, North Dakota, South Dakota, Missouri, and Maryland. Maryland should be a pretty easy one.
Yeah.
Those first 4, if for those viewers that don't really know the U.S., those are very conservative states. So I'm really excited. And those are adult use. They're already, all those, by the way, are already medicinal. So, and for your audience, right now we already have 37 states plus 3 territories and the District of Columbia that allows some sort of legalization, whether it's medicinal or not. I mean, we're getting to the point of almost 80% of the United States, the citizens just voting on their own, saying, we're not waiting for you. So this is getting just ugly and painful to watch as a citizen of the United States.
Kyle, I think you make a good point too about the Democrats and some of the fears of a McConnell regime coming in. You're right. I mean, they've held all 3 chambers of government for 2 years and nothing has been done. I mean, I shouldn't say nothing. I mean, Biden did that limited possession on the federal level and all that, but very little has been done. COA was an overreach. No one agreed thought that would go through. It was almost designed to say that they did something, but knowing that it wouldn't go through, right? So, and of course, Chuck Schumer's biggest lobbyist is Big Pharma. So, I don't know. I mean, I think some of the fears that some people might have that if there is a red wave, are unfounded, and especially in the House where you have representatives like Nancy Mace bringing in more realistic bills that could garner better support in the Senate. So I just wanted to add that too, that there's a lot of fear out there, but I think some of it might be unjustified.
So 100%, and I don't think, I mean, I don't spend lots of time worrying about things I can't control. And
yeah, of course.
When it comes down to it, I'm here in California. My vote, this is a completely blue state. So
Yeah.
I will still vote, of course. But I think you're right. And I've talked to Nancy, and I think her bill makes the most sense to me because it sort of sprinkles a little bit of everything, including social, where, we need to get prisoners out. And I do want to give a tip of the cap to President Biden because he told us, I sit on the board of Mission Green with Weldon Angelos, and he said that the administration said they would start with that. They did it. Now, did it get anybody out of prison? It didn't get one person out of prison, but it actually expunged a lot of records, and that does have value. And now the second thing we think he'll do is, again, after the midterms, that he'll actually start releasing people from prison. Not a full pardon, but for the guys like Parker Coleman and Jose Valero Jr. that call me, that are in federal prison.
Yeah.
I don't think right now pardon is the first thing on their mind. It's just get me the heck out of here.
So you don't think that there's any momentum from Biden's announcement last month about rescheduling to, say, a Schedule 3 that carries into the next month or two? There's a lot of optimism, a lot of excitement within the industry pertaining to the political side for the first time in quite some time. But a lot of conversations that we're having are people with feedback like yourself, like we'll see Safe Plus, and then other people basically saying, no, this will be rescheduled, 280E will be taken off the table, and you don't know what to believe. But any truth to any momentum just continuing on from that announcement from last month?
Sure. President Biden said, I'm going to ask my Secretary of Health and Human Services, Xavier Becerra, to look into this, and also our Attorney General Merrick Garland. So he asked two cabinet level people. The thing about Xavier is, he lives in the San Fernando Valley here in LA, in the city of Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he was our Attorney General here in California. He is pro-cannabis. He's a good guy. And I think very highly of him, and I think there's going to be a stew that they're cooking up there. And I think that Joe Biden's tendency would probably be a gift towards pharmaceuticals. Hopefully the industry will join me and join Weldon Angelos in pushing back. The reason is, if you're just rescheduling, people will still go to prison. Mm-hmm. And that's just not acceptable.
Right.
We need to deschedule. That's really the only path. And unfortunately, the best path is through Congress, because if the president does something, it can be undone. We saw what Trump did when he came into Obama stuff, and what Biden did. Then we just have this merry-go-round of nonsense. But so I'm hoping the problem, a lot of the MSOs are concerned that with a deschedule, it would open up interstate commerce immediately. And it probably would. So
now, speaking of interstate commerce, oh, sorry to cut you off, Kyle, but since you mentioned interstate commerce, I noticed that Governor Gavin Newsom in California, I think it was last week at some event, basically said that California should be the distributor of cannabis throughout the nation, essentially, right? So he was pointing to the fact that California should be the purveyor of interstate commerce whenever that's available. So was that just sort of lip service in advance of, a descheduling and 280E and all that happening downstream? Is he trying to get out in front of that? Or what did you make of his comments?
So great question. Let me step back by saying, I do think within the next 2 years, no matter how Tuesday goes, that we are going to be dealing with descheduling or rescheduling. I think it's going to move. And you can make an argument that the worse that Mitch McConnell is, the more guys like Gavin Newsom, who now has the power from the legislature that he signed to start doing these deals, like, for instance, with the governor of New Jersey, who said, we're not going to be able to grow enough here. So they're going to need cannabis. So there's a lot of different ways this could shape up, but I do think that it's highly possible that you'll see some interstate commerce pacts coming, especially if we start seeing things in Congress stall.
So how does that work then? You say they're working over the next 2 years of rescheduling and descheduling. They make an announcement. So I would think in the short term, you're going to see a big pop in stocks, but gradually over time, this is going to be a lot of work that's being done. So How does this play out over the course of 2 years when you reference that, and how all, what's involved in putting that together?
Yeah. Remember all the different things that, anytime somebody like burps in, up in Canada or down here, Canopy all of a sudden comes out with this announcement, my phone just blows up. And
Yeah.
just like, oh, what are you about to go to NASDAQ? And I'm like, calm down. Let's take a look at this. These kind of things, all this, they just keep chipping at the wall. And I
Yeah.
think, all of a sudden, could we end up on TSX, which all of a sudden changed our trading profile, which then maybe makes Wall Street lobby all the more.
Yeah.
Those kind of things can happen. But I do think that there is momentum on, there are votes on the Republican side, the red side of Congress right now for Safe Plus. There's enough to get this passed today.
Okay.
So again, we're gonna have to look and see the balance of power when it's all said and done. But also, let's remember, Mitch McConnell is from Kentucky, and that is an ag state for hemp. The difference between hemp and THC cannabis is just the amount of THC. That's it. It's the same plant. So it wouldn't. I know he's been an old line drug warrior, but he's also a business guy, and he also has a seat to hold too in Kentucky.
Well, even since he's been removed his house, he basically, our Speaker of the House, what was the one comment he said? China's thinking 5 years ahead, and we're talking about getting high. And, do you think his stance has changed? There's so many more important things other than cannabis leading into these midterm elections. But when you look at a voter approval, if you move ahead with this, there's a lot of people that you can get into your corner and back you as far as voting for you if you just pass. And this is why there's so much conversation pertaining to this industry.
100%, Chad. The issue, though, when you look at what's important to most Americans, cannabis is probably number 10 or below. It's not. It's important to me. It's important to us. We're talking about it. It's important to Parker Coleman and the 2,600 other federal prisoners. The things that, again, it's always something, we talk about black swans. It's going to be something like that here. Like, what happens if Hunter Biden gets charged after the midterms?
Yeah.
What did Joe Biden do? You going to let him out?
Yeah.
What about all those black and brown people sitting in there for cannabis when 38 states people are just legally going in and buying this?
Yeah.
So it might be a black swan kind of moment that helps push it. And I'd probably argue that's where we're going. And also some of the strange bedfellows where literally Wall Street's got to be just clamoring about money that's going to Canaccord and measure, 8 Capital up in Toronto. And all of us down here have made the rounds to Canada, and all that money, and I assure you, we paid a lot of money to Canadian investment bankers. Last I checked, the investment bankers on Wall Street, they're still greedy.
Yeah, of course. One thing's for sure, free speech is about to get real with Elon Musk taking over with Twitter. This is going to be interesting times, to say the least, on where you bring up Hunter Biden. Wow, that's going to pick up, I think, a lot of attention over the next little short term. But besides all that political talk, because I don't want to get too involved in that, in the event that we see a sea of red, Ben, how do you think stocks will perform shortly after?
Honestly, that's a really good question. Honestly, I think they could perform pretty well. If we look at just what happened this week, the broad market indices took a tumble to begin. The Fed raised rates 75 basis points. I think the S&P was down 6%-ish at some point. And yet, U.S. MSOs, the benchmark ETF, outperformed in the last 3 days of the week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And this was on top of polling numbers coming out progressively during the week that showed, the GOP gaining support in the Senate. So, I don't know this for sure, but if we were to look at this, it seems that the market is either not worried about the prospect of a red Senate or would actually like it. And it's not just from, perhaps safe banking gaining more of a chance of going through. It could also be general economic conditions might improve under a Republican leadership, because obviously the economy is not doing all that well under under the current structure. So I think it could be safe. It could be maybe the economy getting a little bit better under a red Congress, but I don't see any evidence that people are actually worried about U.S. cannabis stocks going into this. I think it actually might be some sort of a catalyst potentially.
Do you think you see the opposite if the Dems get reelected? Like, it almost sounds like if we see a sea of red, that, like you said, Ben, that we could see stocks pop a bit here and the momentum continue to build.
Yeah, I do too. And if you look at the research by Cowen, for example, they anticipate, and I agree with this, that if there is a blue Senate in the unlikely event, because Republicans are almost assuredly going to take the House, and I think they're about a 2.5 to 1 favorite to take the Senate as it currently stands right now in prediction markets. But let's say it stays blue. What incentive would it have for Chuck Schumer to pass legislation now? It would just he would have 2 more years to just go along with trying to get COA in. Like, he would have no incentive to act right now. So I think safe banking would be dead in the short term, and they wouldn't have any incentive to really move forward right now. If you get a red Senate, then Chuck Schumer's out in the new Congress at the beginning of January. Maybe he just tries to get what he can get. Maybe his gambit of trying to go all in, maybe he scales that back and tries to help his lobby and base try to get the best things that he can, especially with New York coming online, right? His home state. There's a whole bunch of minority owners who can't even get, banking services right now. So maybe he makes a move to help them. So I think it's a positive actually for the Congress to go red in the short term, I think. And I think that's reflected in MSOs.
Kyle, I see you nodding over there. Do you agree with that?
I do. And people right now are only focused in on Mitch McConnell. What about Mike Lee? He's a Republican senator with quite a bit of standing in the party from Utah, and has been very supportive of Weldon, and is pro-business. And by the way, Utah, he's been called in his state to talk about, they're very pro-business in that state, and cannabis is part of it. So I guess, to me, I'm looking at it as, I agree with the statistics that Ben just threw out there. I think it's highly likely. Most of my cannabis friends are hoping blue holds on to the Senate. I just don't think that's, I saw Oprah came out for Fetterman in Pennsylvania, and that race is very tight, and you see the Herschel Walker thing going down in Georgia. Ultimately, I think it's going to be red in both, and I think it's more likely, the question is, will the Democrats get off some of the social justice and go with more of a states' rights? The difficulty with Republicans is they always say, hey, we're states' rights, and they're not always there. They'll say it.
Kyle, you don't know what to believe, do you? I don't, right?
Politicians not doing what they say they're going to do. That's weird. So, but
here we go again. We're just being teased. We're close to an election. It's like, okay, this time it'll change. Reminds me back of November of 2021 2000, sorry. But, I remember when the Dems took over the Senate, I was super happy because I was a cannabis investor, and I was thinking, wow, finally, we got a change of voice. Things will change. And not only have they not done anything, but I feel like it's been actually even worse when McConnell was actually House. It was just not even a conversation that's taken place. And, I think in the event that, the Dems do actually get reelected, not a good thing long-term for the industry, because if they would have done it, they would have done something already.
Yeah, and Shad, as you know, I live this industry every single day, including Saturday and Sunday. And I have a lot of friends that they plowed money into our stock, and they'd ask me about some other companies, and I said, yeah, I like that one. I like this one.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was on the momentum of what happened in Georgia when everything went blue. And it's been a really tough 2 years. And so I really feel terrible. Just like when of the cannabis CEOs you talk to, I'm the one who's actually talking to prisoners, like going down to court and talking to judges and saying, please stop doing this. And the folks that have the ability to stop it aren't stopping it. And then you have the Hunter Biden thing we talked about. We also have Brittany Griner. That's been a gift in some ways to those folks here in America that are in prison when Joe Biden's saying she's wrongfully detained for cannabis. And I'm
Right.
like, what? So,
Yeah.
But
Kyle, have you had conversations with Cory Booker?
So one of our board members knows him and has talked to him recently, like within the last 60 days.
What are some of those topics of conversation that you have or your contacts have with Cory? Do you know?
Yeah, I want to be careful not to,
reveal too much. I get it.
But I would say this: I think his stance in the past has been much more social justice. I'm not saying he's not thinking that, but I think he's becoming more realistic, especially going into this. And so I think he'll be a positive force, even in a red Senate. So, and I do think that there's reason for optimism amongst stocks. And I hope for the best and prepare for the worst as a CEO of a large company. But I'm feeling, very good about that. All the head fakes of the past. I just think if you look at the pressure on the dam, it's getting harder and harder and harder. And it's the little things that keep hitting it. And if NASDAQ doesn't kick Canopy off, what does that mean? What does that mean for us down here? So there's we can't replicate that structure. Like, we're somewhat smart. We have lawyers. Yeah. So there's a lot of pressure. And I would just tell you that I think what Ben said, I think those statistics are right on point. I think it's going to be a red wave. And I don't think it's going to be bad for the industry. In fact, I think it's going to be the shock to the blue. And I think we're going to see something within the next 2 years. And I'm hoping it's rescheduling. That's what I'm hoping.
Now, Kyle, my last question over here, speaking of feeling good, I noticed that Glasshouse stock is actually one of the best performing, well, you're not an MSO really, but one of the best performing U.S. cannabis operators out there. You've doubled over the past month. The warrants on your recent financing are almost in the money, not quite there yet, but I mean, they're 5-year warrants, they're almost there. So I want to ask, what do you attribute the strength in your stock in particular versus the other MSOs where are about flat? And are people starting to buy into the theory that, interstate commerce could be a thing, within the next 2 years or so?
Yeah. So thanks for noticing. Number one, I
gotta love that, right?
I thought I would be above looking at the stock price multiple times a day, and I can't avoid it. We've been very happy. A lot of the investors in our company were people that have invested with me for the last since 1996 when I started syndicating, and I communicate as best I can as a publicly traded CEO. We give as many tours as possible. We try and be wide open. I like to think that has something to do with it, but I think where you're going is where I think it is. And that is, as people start looking at what happened in Maine with that federal court case where the Commerce Clause basically was brought out even today before there's any federal legalization. That put a little bit of a shot in our arm. And then I would say that we're built for tomorrow. I think we'll be working with the MSOs. They're going to be having to do some restructuring because they've got overcapacity in a lot of states because they've had to do that. And so we purposely sort of built for that. And I think those are the comments I'm hearing is people feel like Glass House Brands is really tomorrow's company. If legalization, I need to be clear, if legalization doesn't happen for 10 years, we will still just grind it out here in California and try and keep climbing market share. But when federal legalization comes and our cost of production continues to go down, we should be working closely with the MSOs to California, Oregon, and Washington. I think you're going to see most cannabis come from those 3 states.
All right, let's finish it with this. In a few words, Ben, 3 bold predictions, if or even maybe 1 bold prediction. If we see the Republican sea of red win on Tuesday, what's it mean for the cannabis industry? What do you think will happen?
1 bold prediction, maybe not so bold, but I think safe banking in some form will pass in the lame duck session. I think Schumer is going to act, and he's going to take what he can get. I think there's a good chance that Mitch McConnell will support something, even if it's in the NDAA, because he doesn't want to get, he wants to get the the cannabis lobby off his back and say he did something without actually supporting legalization. So I'm going to say some form of safe banking, even if it's just a simple narrow safe banking bill, will pass.
And if the Dems win, it's the same, more of the same.
Well, if you're talking about a Democratic sweep, I think that's unlikely. I don't see them. I see the Republicans winning the House by a good margin. If they just win the Senate and we have a split Congress, then I think there's still a chance that safe banking could pass. Maybe a little bit less, but I still think that's 50-50.
Kyle, bold prediction: if the Republicans red wins on Tuesday.
I think within the first 3 months of 2023, Gavin Newsom comes out with some sort of an interstate commerce pact with another state to put pressure on Congress. Also, he's probably running for president himself, so he's going to want to do that.
All right.
Well, and number 2 bold position, within the first quarter next year, I'll be sitting down with Kevin McCarthy here in California to discuss his thoughts.
Interesting. You going to be on Twitter all day Tuesday?
I've largely backed off, but I'm going to say no, but the answer is going to be, yeah, I won't be able to stop looking at it.
Yeah. At Kyle Kazan, CEO. You can follow us at our Twitter account as well at the Dales Report. Ben, you'll be doing updates all day long. Gentlemen, should be an interesting 48 hours. Keep in touch, and I appreciate you guys both checking in.
All right, thanks guys. Thanks, Kyle.
Always good to be here, chatting with you and Ben.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching. So what'd you think of the interview? If there's any information that you want to know more of or want to learn about, then provide us with feedback by leaving a comment below. And if you like what we're producing, then feel free to subscribe to our channel, share this video with your network, and as well, click on that bell for all notifications because we would not be here without you. We appreciate it. Thanks for watching, everyone.